All right, everyone, as more elements of Trump's budget and so forth are coming out, it looks less and less like he's actually sold out. And it's funny because some of those people that were like, oh my God, Trump has sold us down the river on the wall. It's MAGA, not MAGA anymore. Oh my God, and standard shit. Some of them have come around to the rude realization that they jumped the gun and are completely wrong. Now, what I pointed out is that when Trump's budget deal was put forth, he gained a small amount of the money he needed for the wall, for a small amount of wall extension and rebuilding. He got some border agent stuff. He got a pittance, basically. But here's this genius of Trump's strategy. Number one, it's a temporary continuation. Now there's another budget battle looming, and he might get several more cracks at it. Number two, he got his emergency declaration. Now, the legislature is trying feverishly to stop that. That's not Trump's fault. It's also not going to come down on Trump's head, because 99% of the voters that want the wall are going to say, look, it's not Trump that abandoned the idea, it's Congress that did, including a bunch of Republicans, especially within the Senate, to try to block this national emergency declaration. Now, if they fail, he's golden, because it goes before SCOTUS, he probably wins. If they manage to rebuff him, then he can run against the legislature. And probably it'll work, and some of those never-Trumpers will get kicked out of the Republican Party over the next couple of years, certainly in the next election, and then he'll proceed with his wall in his likely second term. Who's going to stop him? There's no viable candidate lined up to fight him. The Democratic Party is weaker than it was in 2016. It really is, and especially now that you've got Pelosi as the de facto punching bag standard bearer of the party until they actually nominate someone. No wonder Trump's approval rose, especially after the State of the Union. His budget deal was something that he had to sign. He had no choice but to continue the budget. Now there's another budget crisis looming. It will probably cause another shutdown. And this time he's not asking for like $5 billion, he's asking for $8.5 billion. That's part of his budget proposal. Now that'll get winnowed down, but you watch what'll end up happening. He will almost certainly secure further funding for the wall, and this won't even have to do with the National Emergency Declaration. It won't even have to do with that. They'll try to box him in, but he will get some more wall funding. And at the end of the day, he'll have gotten 3 separate installments over the course of the first 3 years he's been in office. I would say that's decent progress. Yes, that ticks the box of promise kept. It's not a finished job. It will require more time. It requires a second term of Trump. And that's the genius of it. Here's the real genius. He can come out to his voters and say, look, we've already built, X number of miles of wall. We've improved things. We have more ICE agents. More border crossings have been shored up. We've done all sorts of stuff. And he'll go through and he'll show you that. But we need to do more, so you have to reelect me. And give me better Republicans in Congress, too, and kick the Democrats back out of the House, or it'll be a slower process. Here's the funny part. Trump has actually managed to make progress. What the black pillars don't seem to understand is Rome is not built in a day. Retrofitting 500-600 miles of border wall, when we've got a separation of powers and a constitution, is a lot harder than if he was an autocrat. Donald Trump, they're expecting him to act like a dictator. He can't legally do that. Now, some people like Coulter comes out, well, he can use military funding. He can use the military to build the wall. Okay, fair enough. Technically, yes. The problem is that his national emergency declaration that enables that has been challenged by the legislature and an injunction issued by the Ninth Circuit. The Ninth Circuit's injunction is unconstitutional. He clearly has the right to do what he's doing. But SCOTUS has to overrule the lower court decision. The judiciary in such a case is the tippy top, not the executive branch. Despite the fact that it is objectively and observably illegal for the Ninth Circuit to obstruct him in that way, it is still legally binding until SCOTUS points out, yeah, it's by the way, this is bullshit, he can build his wall. Second to that, the legislature is in his way. If the legislature decides to officially rebuke the idea of a national emergency declaration, he doesn't have a way around that now, does he? He'll have to look for other executive level options or wait for SCOTUS to weigh in. Of course, he can still say, okay, well, it's going to have to go before SCOTUS, but the legislature can overrule it anyway. But that makes them culpable, not Trump. It's very, very funny when all these people, they're trying to take the easy way out. See, it's easier to blame the president for being obstructed than to go after the real issue, which is a bunch of people in Congress. Because they're more numerous and it's harder to get rid of them because of the incumbent advantage being so widely spread. So Coulter and all these other people, they would rather just say, well, it's a promise broken. Trump hasn't built his wall. Yes, on day one, he should have acted like a dictator and risked being removed immediately from office by saying, you know what, I'm going to ignore the courts, I'm going to ignore the legislature, I'm going to build the wall anyway. How exactly he gets the funding for that is a mystery, but supposedly you have all these wonderful ways he can do it. The problem being the Ninth Circuit will issue an injunction, dude. It's a judicial strangulation. Yes, it is an activistic court. It is a weaponized segment of the judiciary, but he has to deal with it. He has no other legal option. He has no other choice. Meanwhile, he's seeking now even more money, and the reason why he's upped the ante and asking for $8.5 billion instead of the other $5 billion that he would have been asking for is because he knows that total's never going to be given to him. But some probably will, because they'll say, look, I want another installation of wall funding. You need to give me more funding for a different location. This place, this place, this place. You give me more funding. I want more border security, because this is something that the American people widely and wildly support, which is true. You need to give that to me, or I'm not going to sign. Yes, we'll shut the government down again. And so in little increments, he'll get the wall built. But it's going to require him to be reelected to finish the whole thing, which is exactly the point. Yeah, and it makes sense to do it, more slowly, boil the frog, so to speak, in this manner. How else is he supposed to do it? There's no legal recourse for him. That's the whole problem. So yeah, what I would say is, for those of you who have been like, oh my God, Trump no longer wants to MAGA. He's sold us out on immigration. He hasn't deported everyone yet, in other words. It turns out that Styx was right and we were wrong, and he actually wasn't a total ethno-nationalist. He was, as Styx predicted, a fucking centrist populist who simply wanted to secure the border and doesn't have a problem with legal immigration. Now, if somebody thinks that's a problem, okay, you can have that ideological argument, but you were wrong and I was correct. Just forget right and wrong for a second on the border or immigration or whatever. I was correct in the way he would go about it, and I was correct in the motive for him doing so. And so my prediction of how he would function turned out to be right. And other people that thought that, again, that he would go full autocrat and he would slam down the border. Look, he has to use eminent domain to complete the border wall. Now, that's going to go over really well. That'll be a totally separate battle. Even if they funded him today, he would still have to go in and use some of that money to buy up these tracts of land near the border to build his border wall. The problem is, even though he obviously, again, objectively has the right to do that, it's requisite on a national emergency declaration, because otherwise it wouldn't fit the description of eminent domain. You do realize that, right? If the national emergency declaration is shot down, he has to have the legislature authorize such things. He can't do it on his own. Trump can't go in and say, okay, I want your farm because I need to build something. It's not the way that eminent domain works. There has to be a compelling reason why it is necessary for the government to acquire a piece of land. Then you have to offer the person a fair value. I think personally eminent domain should involve having to pay 10 times the value of land or structures or whatever. The reason why is because government should be more reluctant to use it, number one. And number two, I believe in capitalism. Yeah, and if a person has a piece, they strategically bought a piece of land they knew might be useful, where it turns out, hey, there's there's a shit ton of oil, a whole fucking lake of it under your farm. Well, we're using eminent domain so we can subdevelop this. Oh, okay, that's fine. You should have to pay 10 times what the land's worth. Yeah, person has a right to profit by it. Make the government reluctant again. Even better, take it out of the money given to government itself. Not like, oh, taxpayer money. Okay, well, it's like police when they settle a case and they're taking taxpayer money to pay people off for their own problems, or crooked politicians with their collective money for sex assault allegations that the Congress actually has, and they hushed it up like they were saying, well, we need to investigate this, and then they went silent about that. I wonder why. How many of them have sexually assaulted and raped people? Probably a good proportion, a double-digit total of the people in Congress, I'm sure. Now, people have the right to benefit by their land and by their holdings. Eminent domain should be generally restricted in its use. I would say, though, that it is a national emergency when you have 100,000 people a month pouring across the border. In what circumstance would our founders not have found that to be a problem? Of course they would have. They would have just shot at the people. They wouldn't have even... Government wouldn't have needed to be involved. Back then, people took matters into their own hands. It was considered perfectly acceptable. If they're not Americans, they're from some tribe or from some other country, yeah, you can shoot them. Oh, they're stepping on your land illegally? Yeah, you can mow them right down. You fucking fire a cannon at them if you want. It's considered a general pastime. Maybe there's something to be said for that kind of a Wild West vigilante sort of stuff going on. That's about all. Peace out.